in this story, it wasn't me that was injured. There are three things in this story. I'm going to tell you about these things, and then you're going to try and find out what happened. And you're going to tell your own version of the story before you find out what actually happened. The first bit of information for you is this. This is a battlefield. You can see it's all mud. You can see here a shell hole. And there were shell holes everywhere on the battlefield where a mortar bomb or mine exploded, and it just left a hole. It quickly filled with liquid mud. And some of them were deep. And if you ended up in a shell hole, it was very difficult to get out again. Because if you tried to get out, you just slipped back in. Many men lost their lives drowning in shell holes. And they stank. They stank of rotting flesh. Also, there's a letter in this story, a letter from my sister. When I was in the trenches, I received this letter from home, from my sister. The third thing is, after the war, my dentist fixed my teeth, but he didn't let me pay. He refused payment for fixing my teeth. Now those three things are connected. All right, ask me.
Did you ever sit in the shell hole?
I didn't end up in the shell hole, but there was another man in the shell hole, and I pulled him out of the shell hole.
Did anyone get hurt?
Yes, well, not my family, no, but this man in the shell hole, he had been shot in the back. So I pulled him out of the shell hole. It was very difficult, I didn't want to slip in. And I carried him over my shoulder to the dressing station where they were going to treat him.
Did you, cry when your sister wrote the note to you?
I didn't cry when I got the letter from my sister because she was just giving me news from home. But what she did say in the letter is that this man who had been shot was back at home. Because it turned out that I knew him. He was an old school pal of mine, and he was back home, but he was badly wounded.
Was the shell hole a bit like quicksand?
Yeah, he got swallowed down into it, and he was scrambling to get out. If I hadn't pulled him out, he would have drowned in there.
Had one of your friends ever died in the shell hole?
Well, he didn't. This young man, he was the dentist's son, the man that I pulled out. And he didn't die in the shell hole, but he died later at home from his injuries, even though I pulled him out.
Did you see anybody slip in the shell hole?
I didn't see him slip in, but I pulled him out. Find out about the dentist as well.
Did the dentist, did you lose any teeth from the bone?
Well, yeah, he pulled out all my teeth and he gave me a whole new set, but he wouldn't let me pay. Can you find out why he wouldn't let me pay?
Would he not let you pay because you pulled out his son?
Exactly. Thank you, Mr. Brown. It was because I pulled his son out of the shell hole that he wouldn't let me pay. So now you know lots of information about the story, don't you? Turn to your partner, tell the story. What do you think happened? See how much detail. I was with a working party, and our job was to go forward during the night and bring supplies to the front line. So we were going forward in single file, and it was very muddy and wet. We had to be careful, and suddenly there was a huge explosion, and I lost track of the other people in my working party. But what I did see in the darkness was this shell hole, and there was somebody in it trying to get out. There was a fellow trying to scrabble his way out, and he kept slipping back in. So I thought, what should I do? Try to find my comrades or help him? Well, I went over and I got down, and I had to be very careful so as not to slip in myself. I caught him under his arms, and although he was heavy, I managed to pull him out of the shell hole. It took a lot of effort. And I sat him down there and I said, "Are you all right, mate?" He said, "No, I've been shot in the back." I said, "Can you walk, mate?" He said, "No, I can't." I So I managed to get him onto my shoulder. His head was hanging down the back, and I had my arms around his legs like this. And I started carrying him away. It was dark, I had to be careful I didn't slip or fall into another shell hole. Anyway, it took hours. Finally, at first light, I got to the dressing station where they treat the injured. Well, an orderly, he showed me in, and I lay him down on his belly, and the doctor came. And the doctor asked him his name, and this fellow said, Duncan. Not R.S. Duncan, I said. Yes. Who's that? Well, it's Hubert Trotman. Oh, Hubert, he said. Oh, thanks, Hubert, for saving me. We were at school together, weren't we? Well, the thing is, I didn't even know he was in the Royal Marines. But he had joined after me. He was an old school pal of mine from my council school days. I hadn't even recognised him. Anyway, the doctor turned me out, and I went back to the trenches, and I hadn't been missed, because the others got back about the same time. A couple of weeks later, I got a letter from my sister from home. And in the letter, she said, that R.S. Duncan, the dentist's son, had been badly wounded and was back at home with his family. Well, I knew that already. And she said he was going about with crutches. The war came to an end. And at the end of the war, I got married. And I said to my wife, I was busy in the bakery, could you make me an appointment with Freddie Duncan, the dentist, because I needed a lot of work on my teeth. Could you make it as late as possible? So she came back and she said, well, Freddie Duncan says he'll see you any time. So I went down that very evening at 7 o'clock and he asked me what I wanted. Well, I showed him all my teeth had been smashed up with a pickaxe accident in the trenches. So I said, I'll have the whole lot out, and a new lot. So he took out all my teeth. And he said, did I want a temporary set? And I said, no, I'll come back when my gums are healed. So I came back and he put in a new set of dentures. And then he had me to come back again to check that they were fitting properly. And then he came and asked me to go back again. And then he asked me to go back again, and I got fed up with it. I didn't want to go back anymore. So I said to my wife, could you go and get the bill from Freddie Duncan? When she came back to the bakery, she said, there's no bill for you. He said that Hubert Trotman didn't need to pay his bill after what he did for his son. He owes you a debt of gratitude. I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, he said, didn't your husband tell you what he did for my son? She said, no. And he told her, if it hadn't been for your husband, my son would never have come home. He would have drowned in that shell hole, and he would have been one of the missing. But because your husband saved him, he did come home. He was badly wounded, he was shot, but we looked after him. And he died, but he died with us, his family. And because of that, we've got a grave for him where we can put flowers. I've had your husband up here time and again, completely unnecessarily, wanting to thank him. I just couldn't get the words out. Well, my wife told me all this. So anyway, next time I was in the street, I saw, coming the other way, Freddie Duncan, the dentist. So I put my hand out, I shook him by the hand, and I said, it's all right, Mr. Duncan, it's all right. My wife told me everything. And that's the story. That's what happened. Was there any differences between what I said and the story you told? Was it the same? Just tell the person you told it with. What were the differences between your version and what I told you?